The rain came down in sheets that November evening, the kind of steady downpour that turns streets into rivers and makes you grateful for a warm home. Michael Chen stood at his kitchen window, watching the water stream down the glass, while his 12-year-old daughter Emma sat at the table behind him, her homework spread out in neat piles. Michael was 47 years old, with the kind of quiet strength that comes from weathering life's storms alone. His dark hair showed traces of silver at the temples, and the lines around his eyes spoke of both laughter and tears. He'd been raising Emma by himself for 6 years now, ever since his wife Sarah had passed away from cancer. Those years had taught him patience, resilience, and the profound importance of simple kindness. "Dad," Emma said, looking up from her math problems, "there's someone outside." Michael turned from the window and followed his daughter's gaze. Through the rain-blurred glass of their front door, he could see a figure huddled on the bench at the bus stop across the street. The person was hunched over, clearly trying to shield themselves from the relentless rain, but it wasn't working. They had no umbrella, no proper coat, just what looked like a thin jacket that must have been soaked through. He glanced at the clock. It was almost 7. The next bus wouldn't come for another hour and a half. The route had been changed last month, something he'd learned the hard way when he'd waited 40 minutes longer than expected. "That's Mrs. Patterson's stop," Emma said quietly. "But that's not Mrs. Patterson." Michael grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. "I'll be right back," he told his daughter. "Dad, wait." Emma was already pulling on her own raincoat. "I'm coming with you." Together, they hurried across the street, their shoes splashing through puddles that reflected the streetlights like scattered coins. As they got closer, Michael could see it was a woman, probably in her early 60s, with gray hair plastered to her head. She was shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Excuse me," Michael called out gently, not wanting to startle her. "Are you waiting for the bus?" The woman looked up, and Michael saw a face etched with both weariness and dignity. Her eyes were a soft hazel, and despite her obvious discomfort, she managed a small smile. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling from the cold. "The number 42. "That bus won't come for another hour and a half now," Michael said, his voice kind. "They changed the schedule last month. Would you like to wait at our house? It's just across the street. We can give you some hot tea, and you can dry off a bit." The woman hesitated, and Michael could see the conflict in her eyes. Stranger danger, he thought. She'd probably spent a lifetime being told not to trust people she didn't know. It was Emma who tilted the balance. "Please," his daughter said, with all the earnest warmth of youth. "You'll catch your death out here. My dad makes really good tea." "Well, actually, I make it better, but don't tell him I said that." That brought a genuine smile to the woman's face, and after a moment, she nodded. "That's very kind of you. My name is Dorothy. Dorothy Wilson." "I'm Michael, and this is Emma," he said, already shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "Let's get you inside." Their home was modest but warm, the kind of place that spoke of love and care in its small details. Family photographs lined the hallway, Emma's artwork decorated the refrigerator, and there was always a pot of something simmering on the stove. Tonight, it was Michael's mother's recipe for chicken soup, filling the house with the comforting aroma of herbs and home. Dorothy stood dripping in the entryway, looking uncertain despite their welcome. She was clearly uncomfortable and posing, even as she shivered in her wet clothes. "Emma, why don't you grab one of my sweatshirts and some dry socks for Mrs. Wilson?" Michael suggested. "The bathroom's just down the hall if you'd like to change," he added to Dorothy. "And please, don't worry about anything. You're not imposing. On a night like this, we should all look after each other." 20 minutes later, Dorothy sat at their kitchen table, wrapped in an oversized Stanford sweatshirt that had belonged to Michael's late wife, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. Emma had insisted on adding honey, because honey makes everything better, she'd explained solemnly. "This is incredibly kind of you," Dorothy said, taking a sip. "I don't know what I would have done out there for another hour." "How did you end up at that bus stop?" Michael asked gently, setting down his own mug. He wasn't prying, just showing interest, the way one human being should to another. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, and Michael could see her deciding how much to share. Finally, she spoke. I was visiting my daughter. She lives about 3 miles from here. We had a disagreement. I left before I should have, and by the time I realized the bus wasn't coming, I'd walked too far to turn back. My pride, I suppose. And my phone battery died. She said it simply, without drama, but Michael heard the pain underneath. He knew about family conflicts, about the way pride could make you do foolish things. He knew about the ache of complicated relationships. Family can be challenging, he said simply. But I'm glad you're here now, and safe. Emma, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. What did you fight about? Emma, Michael said gently, but Dorothy shook her head. It's all right. It's a fair question. She paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. My daughter thinks I should sell my house and move into a senior living facility. She says I'm too old to live alone, that it's not safe. But that house, it's where I raised my children, where my husband and I spent 40 years together. It's filled with memories. I'm not ready to let it go. Michael understood that kind of attachment. This house, with all its modest charm, held Sarah's presence in every corner. He'd kept her garden tools in the shed, her favorite coffee mug in the cabinet. Letting go wasn't just about practicality. It was about honoring what had been. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking, he said. 63, Dorothy replied. Which apparently makes me ancient in my daughter's eyes. Emma laughed. That's not old. My teacher Mrs. Morrison is 68, and she still does yoga every morning and went hiking in the mountains last summer. Dorothy smiled at that, a genuine warmth reaching her eyes for the first time. Thank you, dear. Though I must admit, some days I do feel every one of those 63 years. They talked as the rain continued its steady drumming on the roof. Michael learned that Dorothy had been a librarian for 35 years, that she loved mystery novels and gardening, that she had 2 children and 4 grandchildren. She learned that Michael was an architect who worked from home, that Emma wanted to be a marine biologist, that they volunteered at the local animal shelter every Saturday. The conversation flowed naturally, the way it does when people genuinely listen to one another. Michael noticed how Emma seemed drawn to Dorothy, asking questions about her work at the library, her favorite books. His daughter had been only 6 when Sarah died, and while his mother and sister had been wonderful, there was something special about this connection forming before his eyes. Would you like some soup? Michael asked as the clock approached 8. It's nothing fancy, but it's warm and filling. I couldn't possibly impose any further, Dorothy protested, but Emma was already setting the table for 3. You're not imposing, Michael said firmly but kindly. You're sharing a meal with friends. There's a difference. The soup was indeed good, rich with vegetables and tender chicken, the kind of meal that nourishes both body and soul. As they ate, Michael found himself sharing more than he usually did with strangers. He told Dorothy about Sarah, about those difficult years of illness and the adjustment afterward, about learning to braid Emma's hair from YouTube videos and burning more dinners than he could count in those early days. Dorothy listened with the kind of attention that had probably made her an exceptional librarian, her eyes compassionate but not pitying. You've done a beautiful job, she said, looking at Emma with genuine admiration. Raising a child alone is one of the hardest things anyone can do. Your daughter is clearly thriving. Emma beamed at that, and Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. It was validation he hadn't known he needed. And you, he asked Dorothy. What was it like, raising your children? Any wisdom to share? Dorothy laughed softly. Oh, I made plenty of mistakes. I was too strict sometimes, too lenient others. I worried too much about things that didn't matter and not enough about things that did. But I loved them fiercely, and I think that counted for something. Though right now, my daughter might disagree. She's worried about you, Michael said gently. Sometimes love looks like arguments. I know, Dorothy sighed. And I know she has valid concerns. But I'm not ready to be put out to pasture just yet. I still have so much living to do. Then do it, Emma said with the simple clarity of youth. You should do what makes you happy. As long as you're safe,